everyone, it's Nick Bowling here, author of Witchborn and In the Shadow of Heroes. I am just checking in to read you a bedtime story. I am calling from my family home. I might just give you a bit of context because I know it looks quite big and quite grand. Basically in 2001, my parents, Lord and Lady Bowling, went on holiday to Center Parcs and they did not come back. And after a few months of legal wrangling, it was basically decided that I should inherit the Bowling estate as stipulated in their wills. So I've been basically knocking around in this place for the best part of 20 years. It's just me and a few of the other residents who have passed on. So yeah, the downside is it is haunted, but the upside is I've got a lot of room to practice my forward rolls. So sort of swings and roundabouts, really. I mean, I may as well, while I'm here, I'll just give you a quick introduction to some of the lads. These are all haunted, by the way, all of them, to varying degrees. That is Uncle Ian, Uncle Greg, Uncle Peter. That is Great Aunt Sade. That is Greg, just Greg. And this is, don't know who that is, that came with the frame. So yeah, it's just me really knocking around here. Can get a little bit lonely, but like I say, I've got this lot to keep me company most of the time. I would show you some of the other rooms, but sometimes if you open the door, you just get lots of screaming. So I might save that for another time. Anyway, the reason I'm here is to give you a bedtime story. And I'll be reading from my newest book, In the Shadow of Heroes. I don't know if you saw this on the way down. Those are my grandmother's hands. Again, that was all in the will. I inherited those. They're not a model. They're not a model of my grandmother's hands. They are her actual hands, and they're not only just a nice reminder of her, but they also act as a superb camera holding device. So, thanks, Granny. So here we go. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I am wearing a golden fleece, not a brown fleece, as some people would have you believe, a golden fleece. And the reason I'm wearing that is because In the Shadow of Heroes is all about the golden fleece, which is a myth you might have heard of. It's not set in ancient Greece, it's actually set in Rome in the year 67 AD under the Emperor Nero, who is also someone you might have heard of. And it's the story of a slave called Cadmus, whose master gets embroiled in the Emperor Nero's mad scheme to try and find the golden fleece from myth. And Cadmus finds himself caught up in the expedition to try and track the fleece down, and caught up quite personally and in quite an unexpected way in the mystery that unfolds. So, just to give you a taster and to get you ready for bed, I'm going to read you the first chapter. So, Prologus, which means prologue in Latin. Prologus. The girl was like a visitor from the world below. Even if Sylvanus had been able to stand, she still would have been a head taller than him. From where he lay, spread out on the couch and delirious with fever, she seemed inhumanly large, dark, insubstantial. Pluto himself come to take him away. He motioned to his slave to bring him a little water and then dismissed him. With difficulty, he propped himself up on one elbow and beckoned the girl into the room. She approached the couch in 2 giant strides, bringing with her a clean smell of dust and hot air from outside. Healthy visitors only reminded Sylvanus of how sick he was. His room was damp and fetid. The plaster on the walls seemed to sweat as much as he did. "You speak Latin?" he asked. The girl just stared at him and didn't reply. That was good. It meant she wouldn't be able to read what she was delivering. "Greek?" he said. She nodded slowly. "You want to get out of this place, don't you?" Her face remained expressionless, as though weighing up whether this might be some sort of trap. And she nodded again. "Well then," said Sylvanus, "I have a job for you." He hauled himself upright, his body sagging like a sack of grain. He waited for the throbbing in his temple to subside, and then made his way to a strongbox in the corner of the room. 3 times he stumbled and fell. 3 times the girl made no move to help him, but simply stood by the couch, watching with curiosity. Sylvanus opened the box and took out a scroll and a wax tablet. He put the scroll on the desk and handed the tablet to the girl. "I've watched you," he said. "I've watched you with the other slaves. You seem," he groped for the word, "resilient." Still, she said nothing. "I want you to look after this tablet with the same vigor that you look after yourself. Do you understand? Its contents are very important, more important than I can tell you." She was starting to look bored now. "Listen!" Sylvanus tried to shake her by the arm, but found himself clutching onto her to stop himself from falling. He coughed, tasted blood in the back of his mouth. "Listen to me. You must take this to a man in Rome. His name is written inside. Go to the harbour, get a boat to Italy as quickly as possible, by any means possible. No one else is to read it." His slave trotted back into the room behind them, holding a circle of iron in his hands. "You'll have to wear this, I'm afraid. I can't afford to have the message going astray." Sylvanus took the collar from the boy and fumbled with the clasp. He fitted it around the girl's neck. A wooden tag hung by a chain onto her chest, which read in Latin, "I belong to Gaius Domitius Tullus, Senator. If you find me, return me to my master at Rome." Sylvanus could see that the collar was too tight around the girl's muscular neck, and her brow twitched with discomfort. "Go," he said. "Don't rest. The man in Rome will look after you, I promise." He nodded to his slave, who led her out of the room, taking 3 steps for every one of hers. She never said a thing, and she never looked back. Sylvanus watched them go and wondered, through the fog of his sickness, if he was making a terrible mistake. Perhaps, he thought, it would be better if all he knew went with him to his grave. He swayed a little on his feet. He rolled up the edge of his toga and looked at the 2 tiny puncture wounds on his thigh. The flesh around them had gone a sickening shade of yellow, threaded through with dark purple veins. No doctor in all of Athens had been able to do anything for him. Now he was resigned to prayer, and he very much doubted the gods wanted to listen to him. Behind him, the scroll that he had taken from his strongbox was still lying on the writing desk. He picked it up and held it for a moment, enjoying its weight, tracing his finger around the bosses at the top and the bottom. Then he took the oil lamp from the tabletop, held it to the corner of the scroll, and set fire to it. He dropped it onto the tiles and watched the tightly burned papyrus burn and flicker and flutter like a crow's feathers. His eyes watered from the smoke. He may have been crying, though he hardly had the energy for it. Either way, it was done. Now it was all down to the girl. Outside he could hear the streets of Athens singing and clattering with life. Sylvanus smiled. He'd hated the noise when he arrived. Strange men hollering in strange accents. Now, on the brink of death, it sounded like music. He crushed the remains of the scroll with his heel, then stumbled back to the couch, pulled the coverlet over his body, and waited for night. So, that's the opening chapter. If you would like to know how the rest of the story unfolds, then you'll have to read the rest of it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you are all healthy and happy and safe. I hope all that chat about ghosts doesn't keep you up. I've just realised this was meant to be a bedtime story, and I was talking about hauntings. Anyway, sleep well.